Annie, are you okay? Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie? Oh my God, Scout. Hello. I wasn't expecting it. It was like I went live and boom, there's Scout with greetings and welcome. And yes, welcome to the Smooth Criminal Podcast. It's Monday morning in Australia. Had a fire pot on the weekend. Had a busy weekend. Have lots of things I want to talk about on YouTube now. And I was like, but why now when Christmas and summer holidays and going overseas and all of that stuff is looming? Why now do I finally have things I wish to discuss? Anyway, a bit of fun this morning, I think. Very sad news coming out of the YouTube world in the last 24 hours that Bullhorn Betty is now the proud owner of a press pass. We call them media passes here, but press. I'm great, Darcy. Scout. Have you had a lovely weekend? How's your Sunday going? And I noticed just before I got in the car that everyone who calls her out is pretty much taking the piss and putting up their own versions of press passes. I'm like, well, why don't we have a Piss Week Airlines flying into town for work? Why don't we talk about what sort of passes, if we could have any kind of pass? But what's sad news? She's going to be rocking up to all of these scenes wielding her media pass. I mean, at the end of the day, it means absolutely. My seat just readjusted because I had long-legged Declan in the car with me, my niece's boyfriend. And bless him, I just got in the car and he forward to give my room behind, and there's actually plenty of leg room in this car. That's how sweet he is. He's really tall, like he's over 6 foot, and he's put the seat forward to give her leg room. How thoughtful is that? He's a good lad. Ruth Walton, hello. So yeah, things I learned on the weekend: teenagers eat a lot and do very little. I reckon I did close to 10 loads of dishes, and that's by hand. I don't have a dishwasher. I am my dishwasher. It was just never ending. I mean, I chose to cook and everything. In hindsight, might throw takeaway in the mix next time, but we had fun. We had the fire pot going. The three of us love playing these sort of, guess this song kind of games, or if we'd been up in the house, we would have played Cards Against Humanity, something like that. What do you meme? But instead, it wasn't too bad weather-wise. And then Lily's mum, who's in Singapore, rang and played the game with us for about 10 minutes. It was pretty cute. Had a wonderful weekend. Yay. I know. Sunny was blissing out. My God. In fact, yesterday she was pretty short-tempered because they just uh, uh, they just love her so much, and it's hard not to. She's incredibly cute, as you all know. But she was a bit overwhelmed by all the attention because she gets a lot of attention from me. But put two more people in the house who are both besotted with her as well, and it just didn't stop. And bless her, she was all a bit out of sorts yesterday, and whenever they got up close to midday, Declan was like, oh, she doesn't like me today. And I'm like, she does. I think she's just all partied out. Yeah, kids eat, we do the dishes. Oh, my God. It was crazy. and exhausting. And also, I haven't quite got on top of me still getting on and doing what I need to do or want to do as well. Like I kind of feel, and bless them, they're cute as, but they want to hang out with me. They don't want to, like I've set up a little TV room before for them and said, if you want to go and watch a movie or whatever, feel free to. And they're like, no, we want to watch a movie with you, Honey T. So they like hanging out, which is great. I'm not very good at saying to them, oh, I'm in, I'll see you in an hour sort of thing. And I think I've got to make a point of that, you know, finding do any. You guys honestly don't have to hang out with me if there's better shit happening on YouTube. Like, truly. Don't feel you need to, or I'm going to have a meltdown if you go. I really don't have anything to talk about. I mean, I thought it'd be fun to make fun of Betty's media pass, press pass, but then I'm like, actually, it's not funny. Like, whether it's fake or not, and it probably is fake, let's be honest, but she's just going to be wielding that wherever she goes. It's just going to give her even more, in her opinion, power. It's just going to make her more obnoxious. She's going to think she's bulletproof. Edible plates. No washing up. I am the cool aunt. I'm also the exhausted aunt this morning. I actually need a cup of tea and a nice lie down. What was that old English expression, Ruth? We need a Bex and a good lie down. Was it Bex? I need a cup of tea and a good lie down, which is not great because I'm going to work. It's not practical either. I did see a lot of Thanksgiving photos, banquets, feasts being shared all over social media and YouTube, everywhere. I mean, Thanksgiving was my favourite holiday when I lived in the States. But even though it's way more logical, sensible to serve everything in, we call them foil containers, like the foil sort of tea and scone. Yeah, I feel like that too. In fact, I have got a scone with me. I'm taking a scone with me to work, a cheese and ham one. It's delicious. It's more about the scone and the dough than the cheese and the ham. Like the balance is perfect. It's not too much ham and cheese. Oh my God, it's going to be yummy. I'll be heating that up at work with flashings of butter. Yeah, so the Thanksgiving displays, and I know that it's more logical or sensible because you cook everything in these aluminium baking trays, foil trays, whatever you call them, and then at the end of the day, they all just can go in the bin off to landfill where they'll sit forever. But I understand why people do it because they're cooking mountains of food. But I don't know, I'm a bit traditional, I guess. I mean, one is, for me, the landfill bugs me, but take the environmental sensibility out of the equation. It just doesn't look the same as when you serve it up in beautiful ceramic dishes. And it kind of takes the gloss off the you know, like, I mean, I had parents and grandparents, and I'm sure you guys did too. Like, I kind of call them the good room parents. Like, they had special crockery and cutlery for special occasions and often in display cabinets in the good room. And God forbid children went into the good room, you know, like there was a sunroom or a rumpus room or, I don't know, the garden where you'd go and play. The good room was for visitors and special occasions. Did you guys have that? And even if you didn't have a good room, like there was usually some sort of cabinet that contained all the special occasion crockery and cutlery, because it was very common for people when they got married to be given a set of crockery and a set of cutlery. Yeah, I agree. The ceramic's much easier to clean. So do you think people wash them for recycling or they wash them to use them again? The foil ones. Yeah, the good room. I use all my favourite things. Like if you're given beautiful stuff, for God's sake, use it. And if it breaks, as much as momentarily you're like, oh fuck, that broke. It broke because you were using it. It was used and it was loved, you know. And it was a pain in the ass emptying out my mum and dad's house and my grandparents' houses. Boxes and boxes and boxes of all this delicate bloody porcelain and stuff that then sat in another house in a cabinet. And we ended up donating it. I mean, some of it might have been incredibly valuable, but my family is very much, well, that's somebody else's opportunity. You know, if they're in an op shop where we've donated stuff and they spot some Royal Dalton tea set that's worth $10,000, well, good on them. Not that I think we had that in our house, but, you know, good on them. Good luck to them. Share the love. Oh, you still have good rooms that are for special, and it's kind of nice. I mean, my place isn't really, well, I mean, my place is a beach house anyway, so it's not really the sort of house that warrants a good room. But also, I don't have a lot of rooms, and my living and dining kitchen area is all sort of special occasions or daily occasions, really. But I do have beautiful things, and I use them because someone gave them to me to use, you know. And I'm not one of those people that just sits and looks at a dresser and admires things. I'm like, get amongst it, use it. If it breaks, like I said, it's because you've been using it and it was loved. We recycle foil, so I always wash it if it comes in the house. I'm not sure if you mean you wash it before you use it, or do you just have foil items just invading your home on a daily basis? Look at the sky, guys. Look at this day. And look how we're starting to turn that Australian golden summer colour too. Remember how I pointed out the other day, like it was so weird how green it is? Now it's starting to look like an Australian summer. Not down at my place. I've still got long green grass. So my lawnmower dude is coming almost weekly, and every time he comes back, it's like there's another mountain of grass to conquer. I mean, there's still green grass around this area, but yeah, it's starting to look more like that sunburnt country. Oh, you don't buy foil if you can help it. No, it just walks in the front door by the sounds of it. You don't need to buy it. But it was just, yeah, I don't know. To me, the food looked different. It doesn't look as beautiful when it's plated up into. I mean, I get cooking. I use the foil ones for my barbecue, because I've wrecked so many roasting dishes and stuff on my barbie that I'm all about the foil. But I don't then scrub them for like 30 days to get them clean to use them again. And I do get the ones that sort of collapse down into like a little ball, so they're not like taking up mountains of landfill. But when you've got a beautiful table set with all your good plates and crockery or cutlery, and really gorgeous serviettes or napkins, depending on where you live, it just doesn't look right having all these foil trays full of food. And not a lot of crunchy food. Like I remember doing roast potatoes for Thanksgiving in duck fat, just so we had something crunchy, because it was very macaroni cheese, green bean casserole. Like there was a lot of sloppy things. And I like texture and crunch. I think I would have bought a crunchy loaf of sourdough bread or something as well. Like I was, well, maybe not sourdough, it was the mid-80s, but you know what I mean? Like, yeah, see, a craft project storeroom, perfect. Put dish soap on the bottom of your pots on barbecue. It won't burn. Oh my God. Scout, you have just changed my life. We should be on Better Call Tour. But it's hard because I was going to talk about Bullhorn Betty's media pass and how it's the latest shenanigans. But this is far more interesting. Domestic tips. Yeah, the bottled soap, the liquid dishwashing. We call it dishwashing liquid. What do you call it? Ruth, is it bottled soap? Oh, you're right though. I mean, Scout could also be like a cake of soap that you dampen it a little bit and then rub it over the base. It is the bottled soap, yeah. So we call that dishwashing liquid. Washing up liquid, yeah. I think that's probably what my grandparents called it. There was a lot. I caught up with my friend Alison, who's from the UK, on the weekend as well. I had a huge weekend, guys. I went down to Port Arthur, which is just under an hour's drive from where I am, and caught up with a friend of mine from England who was on a cruise ship. They had a night in Port Arthur and then they had a night in Hobart. I think they've left now. I don't know if we'll see their cruise ship this morning. But it was one of the small ones that looks like the QE2, like it's a cute one. It's only got like 1,900 people on board total, and that includes, probably 700 crew. I mean, if I ever did a cruise, I like the little baby QE2 looking ones, the navy and white ones. I couldn't do the floating cities at all. But I mean, Ali was even saying that it felt crowded at times, even on the smaller boat. No dish soap like Dawn. We're up at the crack of dawn this morning. I saw Dawn's crack. I was up at the crack of dawn. We may be able to wave to them on the ship. I need to message her. Actually, she messaged me yesterday, and I was a bit busy with the teens. The teens were taking up all my time, and I forgot to message her back. But so we had a lovely time at Port Arthur for a few hours. We walked around the site. We didn't join a tour. I was like, I can show you around. And she's like a little mountain goat running up and down hills and checking things out. And we grabbed a really beautiful coffee, and they have gingerbread ghosts because there's ghost tours because it's a penal colony and there's a lot of ghost sightings. So they had gingerbread ghosts, which were really yummy. And then she headed off on a guided tour with some other people off the ship that went off site. They went and had a look at the Tasman Peninsula, Eaglehawk Neck, and there's a lot of amazing geographical features like blowholes and arches and all sorts of yummy things to look at, tessellated pavements or created by nature. And then I told her to go on a tour yesterday out to Bonnarong. She showed me a list of things that they could do, and I'm like, go to Bonnarong. So hopefully she got to hug a koala and feed the kangaroos and everything out of Bonnarong yesterday. I didn't take any pictures. I mean, Ali's got pictures of us together, but she hasn't sent them to me, but I'll ask her to. This is a woman I met on Facebook back when Facebook was tiny. Like, 5,000 people worldwide and about 500 in Australia. Like, it was tiny. I was working in media and I had a media pass. And I discovered this thing called Facebook while everyone was on MySpace. And I'm like, you got to check this out. And back then it was almost like there wasn't a lot on there, but the stuff that was on there was really fucking cool. Like, they had really good games. Like, you could send a dog to one of your friends' Facebook pages. And when they went onto Facebook, there was a dog digging up holes and like pulling electric cables out of the holes and going, like, and doing shits on people's pages. Or you could cover it in paintball. And everyone had a house. Everyone had a Facebook house. It was a game and you could build these really cute houses. There was a game called Mafia New, which is how I met another friend of mine, Freddie, who some of you guys know because I did a show with him. And there was Scrabble before Hasbro came along and said, hello, we own the rights to this. And the original version of Scrabble, you could chat, and that's how I met Alison, and we've stayed in touch all these years later, and we've caught up in face-to-face twice now, one time in Adelaide and now in Tassie. I did have a real media pass. I should try and pull them out. I think I've still kept a couple of them for like special events like the Logies, which is kind of like the US equivalent would be the Emmys, and UK equivalent the BAFTAs. Like, I went to that and I probably still got that media pass. Press pass. I should dig them out. I'll put it on my community page. But yeah, I'll ask Ali if she can send me some of the photos that she took. We actually asked her, we took some photos for some other people and then got them to take photos of us as well. So there should be a few, but there's not many of the site. I don't know if you wanted photos of me and my friend Alison or what other, because I don't mind going back down there and doing a tour with you guys. Hell though, bloody hell though. It's $47 for a day pass. Now, don't get me wrong, Port Arthur has won Best Tourist Attraction in Australia quite a few times. It's beautiful. I mean, it's got the most horrible history, as many of you know, not just from the convicts, but also because of an arsehole who, essentially brought about incredibly strict gun control in Australia. But incredibly brutal history, but beautiful. And the amount of work to keep these buildings, like to restore them and keep them maintained and everything, plus the staff, like they employ a lot of people. But yeah, it was $47. Now, admittedly, that does include a harbour cruise out to Isle of the Dead, and it also includes a guided tour, but I bailed on both of them, didn't opt for either of them because local. But yeah, it was expensive. And then I was like, do you do like a half day pass? And they're like, no, 1 day minimum. So yeah, when I'm rich again, I'll take you there. It wasn't cheap at all. And we used to get, it sucks that they've stopped it. Years ago, Port Arthur, when you went there, if you were local, they gave you like a 12-month passport. And I think you paid like $30 the first time you went there. But then for the whole year, this passport originally gave you free entry. And then I think they started charging you like a small amount, like $10 or something. But they don't do the passports for locals anymore. Probably because Tasmanians are so good at going to, like, we explore our island a lot. And they're probably realising they were missing out on mountains of money. But then, Mona, the fabulous Museum of Old and New Art, if you've got a Tasmanian postcode, you get in for free. And it's always been that way. Yeah, Toya, it is very sad. I did put a link to an article about her story. This is Toya accordingly. I might even go live about her tonight because there was a comment from a new, hopefully, subscriber, but someone I hadn't seen before who wanted the timeline, and I do have every plan to tell Toya's story. Unfortunately, last night the teens left, and I was absolutely I was just exhausted. You did read the article, so you know the story. Yeah, I still want to do it though because there was a comment asking for the timeline, and at the time I should have just said, "Look, I really do want to do it, but can you have a look at this article first, and then we'll discuss it soon." But I was hoping to do it last night, and I actually said to her, "I'll be covering it." But to me, these are the stories that like old-fashioned true crime people were into. It was the cases when people got arrested and then following the trials. The new sort of, and they call themselves true crime, but the new true crime community, it's not like traditional true crime at all. They're sleuthing as soon as a story breaks. I mean, have a look at what's happening with the Idaho 4. And I am a bit, I'm not obsessed, but it is the story that I'm following. Like everyone, obviously, we're hoping that there's an arrest or something soon. Like this is, 2 weeks now without any sort of statements of substance. And by that I mean we have a POI or person of interest, or we, I get people's frustrations that there's no more information, but because there's no more information, all the sleuthy McSleuthsworths are hard at it again. And just theorising and speculating about stuff that has actually been nipped in the bud. Once again, the facts just don't matter. You can overtake me, mate, if you need to. You don't have to go off the clucker. Yep, they do. They jump on the bandwagon. I think he's already on his way, Ruth. Ruth's talking about the man who murdered Toya accordingly, allegedly. He was named very early on as the prime suspect, but he fled to India and before they got him. And if you're going to flee, you want to go somewhere where it's going to be really hard to find you, and India is perfect for that. What's interesting with that case is even though he was named, and this case is 4 years old, even though he was named as a suspect, he could have got to India and gone right up into the mountains and just given himself a new name and just stayed up in the mountains, But what's interesting about this one is the Queensland government increased the amount of money on the reward to $1 million. And not long after, they got him. And he'll be brought back to Australia to face what's coming to him. But it speaks a lot about rewards. It's kind of sad, isn't it, though, that, you look at people on YouTube, the bandwagon crime people, the gore crows, as Cement Shoes calls them, who are not true crime at all. They're sleuths and they're dangerous. But we've had a lot of success lately with increased rewards and for information. And once again, money, the root of all evil. Someone may have been very aware he was the guy who allegedly murdered Toya. The reward goes up and suddenly he's been dobbed in. And they've been able to arrest him and extradite him. It's kind of sad, isn't it? I mean, people's consciences, they don't really have one. But if you dangle money in front of them, information is forthcoming. But at the end of the day, I don't actually have an issue with it because I want murderers, alleged murderers, to be tried and convicted. I want them off the street, and if that's the reality of human nature, yeah, man, do you want to press pass, human animal? Good to see you, gorgeous. But yeah, I don't actually have an issue. If increasing rewards brings results, do it. I just think it's really sad that it does take an increase in a reward for people to speak up. People who might have been protecting him, or they might have also been completely unaware who he was. But it just, again, goes to show how we've sort of, lost the plot a bit. Do you want to press pass, human animal? Oh, and Betty's got one, which is the worst news ever because she's already a nightmare. But she's going to think she's got the power. And there's a lot of people taking the piss out of her and putting their own, photoshopped, handmade press passes up. I didn't actually, I'm not going to lie, I'll be honest, I didn't actually get to watch the whole thing about her getting the press pass because I really like clip channels. I do. It's a great way to be up to speed on all these shenanigans. But when they speed people's voices up, it makes me go a little bit cross-eyed. I've got a very low tolerance for that chipmunk sped-up voice, and I didn't have time to find any other clip of her that wasn't sped up. Like, there's only so much chipmunk I can handle. I'll try to read chat, obviously, when I'm in the car park. We'll have a chat, but you're probably all saying really good stuff and I can't read it at the moment. Sorry about that, guys. But, yeah, I think the clip channels do it so that she doesn't strike him. But fair use, it's pretty easy to dispute it. I mean, a lot of people don't want to because they don't want the person they're clipping to have all their details. But see how nice I am? I'll let cars in. But yeah, I foresee Bullhorn's going to be next level now, and the general public aren't going to know if it's a legitimate press pass or if it's come out of a cornflakes box. And if she's standing there with her bullhorn screaming at them and shoving a microphone in their faces, they'll probably start talking. And once again, if that happens, defence lawyers are going to have an absolute friggin' field day with all of these witnesses who've been tainted by the likes of the Bullhorn and Molly and JLR and, anyone else who starts jumping onto this let's go and harass people before charges have been laid gang. I don't think they realise how much they're basically handing to defence lawyers on a silver platter to essentially have witnesses struck and potentially avoid a conviction and let these fuckers walk free, you know? That's what annoys me about it. And it's going to happen. If it doesn't, you know, with the people they've been meddling with, it could already happen in one of these many cases that they've been doing this shit. Look at that big cloud. So pretty. So yeah, it's not a good thing. I mean, whether it's a legitimate one or not, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, people are going to see it and probably think that they're going to get their 15 minutes of fame, sadly, because there's so many people that want to be on TV, you know, and I foresee bad things will happen. Be keen to chat with you guys about this aspect of it when we get to town, if you agree, because they're already so destructive and they do have the potential to completely stuff up cases that will lead to acquittals. And to me, her having something like that is just going to potentially get people speaking to her who may not have without it. Like, I also had a thought on the weekend. I'm like, I wonder if with the Idaho 4, if they do name a person of interest, if anyone's going to go to Idaho. But because of the timing of the year and leading into Christmas and stuff, hopefully they don't. There's already enough online speculation and naming of people. It's incredible how many names of people, full names and details of where they live, and their social media pages are being poured through. And it's so scary, actually, because it just, every new case, you just think, this is just getting worse. And then there's other cases that some sleuthing could be really beneficial, but they don't cover them because they're not, you know, sexy enough. And by that I mean, you know, they're not sort of fitting into that category, sadly, that you know, hundreds of channels will start covering. But meanwhile, there's other cases. Like, I noticed there's a new missing girl case. Like, she sort of looks like a young adult, maybe even an adult. And I'm predicting she's not going to get a mountain of coverage. I can't think of her name. Like, I literally saw her face in the timeline this morning. But she doesn't fit into that, you know, Gabby Petito, the Idaho 4 girls, that sort of blonde white girl thing. What's the word? Theory. All prayers are good for her case. If I wear an NYPD or FDNY hat and sweatshirt, does that make me that? I think not. No, it doesn't make anybody that, but the general public aren't going to necessarily think that it's fake, you know what I mean? And like, somebody standing out the front screaming, carrying on, Bullhorn, let's go back to Bullhorn again, carrying on, and people, and you're just trying to talk to people, and they're like, well, you know, show us your credentials. Now, if she whisks out this little pass, they might think that that's sufficient and they might go ahead with the interview. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if I was out anywhere, if I was living in a street where there was some case going on, and there's some chick standing outside in the street yelling "whore," "baby killer," "slut," all that sort of stuff through a bullhorn, I wouldn't speak to them even if they had every media pass imaginable and a massive film crew with them and everything else. Like, she lost me at the bullhorn and what was coming out of it, you know? But anytime there's a case, you know, look at how many people come forward and speak to the media and want their faces on TV. You know, that they're the people that are going to talk to Bullhorn with her press pass. And some of them might be potential witnesses. Some of them might be key witnesses. Like the babysitter in the Quentin Simon case should never have spoken to anyone except the authorities. But she did, and then she told different versions, which points at her not being a credible witness, like points at her being an unreliable witness. And it'd be pretty easy to get her evidence struck out of court. And she was closer to Quentin than a lot of people. Like, her evidence, even the information she gave out in interviews, was important stuff. I mean, hopefully with his case, you know, there's enough evidence against Leilani, and now that they've found his partial remains, there'll be enough to get a conviction. But they, you know, she might have been the key to the conviction. You know, imagine if she was the one that Leilani had said, I think I did it. I don't have any memory of it, but I'm pretty sure it was me who did it. And then the defense lawyers get that evidence struck. There goes the conviction. I mean, obviously, you know, this is being a bit sort of loose in theories. I mean, there might have been 20 other witnesses with a similar story, but the Bullhorns don't know that. None of us do. It's a pretty dicey game to be playing. And, you know, keep going back to this too. This is people's lives. This is real life. These are people who've had somebody that they love murdered violently. And they're trying to come to terms with that. And they definitely want whoever to be held accountable. It's not a TV show. It's real life. The main media is so guilty of not helping missing people. They could do so much more. Well, they probably could, but half the time they're being called out to take footage of people like Bullhorn and her crew causing chaos, you know. There's only so many people working in the media. I mean, I agree, but I think YouTubers that make out they're interested in true crime could definitely do more too. You know, that is creating awareness. That's where this whole "I'm creating awareness" line is actually true. And I can't remember the name of the channel, but there's one channel that I watch who he looks at a current case, a solved case, and at the end he also highlights a missing person. Yes, it's my new one though. I'm on the right-hand side of the poll now, not the left. Yep, they are going to do that. You can see it happening already. And I think this press pass is going to be a massive problem because there might be people who she approaches and they'll say to her, "What are your credentials?" And she's going to flash this press pass and they'll start talking. Miss K, hello. But I am hoping they stay the hell away from Idaho, because whoever is responsible for those murders has to be locked up and the key thrown away. It's terrifying, that story. Like, it's a real life horrible slasher movie. It's just so awful. And I'm getting a bit frustrated following it. I mean, I'm waiting for new information, but bouncing around and listening to media covering it and everything else. But I'm trying to avoid channels covering it, because people are just asking the most ridiculous questions. Or still, one thing with crime that's really important in investigating is logic. And sort of, if you have a look at the judgment in Chris Dawson, when he was convicted of murdering his wife Lynette 40 years ago, the judgment talks a lot about piecing all of the information, facts and evidence together, and then what is the only logical explanation. And that was, hey, Susie. We ended up talking about serving Thanksgiving dishes in alfoil trays rather than putting them in pretty crockery. This is the most Bullhorn Betty stuff sort of in now in the last 5 minutes. So good to see you, Groover. But yeah, logic often explains, logic is often the answer to a lot of questions. And I'm finding that for me, I need to stay away from channels that are covering it and just keep waiting in the background for more information to come out, because I'm getting more and more frustrated if I do dip my toe in and listen to something. And you can hear the creator responding to questions. And some of the questions, it's very logical why Noah, the other two girls who survived it, didn't hear anything, but it's also very graphic why they didn't. And part of me wants to go into these chats and say, this is actually not that weird. Stop. There's still people going on and on and on about the housemates not hearing anything, but it can be explained very easily why they didn't. But you've also got to be very graphic, the graphic reality of why they didn't. And not only that, but Scout sent me a link. I checked him out, actually, Scout. I much preferred him to the horoscope people, I have to say, who did the floor plan of the house too. Like, if you actually watch that and see how the house is set up, it also, despite the graphic explanation of why the housemates didn't wake up, but just the layout, the floor plan of the house also explains why they probably didn't hear things. The same with the 911 call. The use of the word unconscious. And there's all these people going, oh, they've woken up and there's 4 murdered. There would have been blood everywhere. Why did they say they were unconscious? Well, there's 2 different theories being bandied about on YouTube, and one of them is one that I thought was the reason why, which is when you call 911 or 000 or any other emergency number and report a murder, when the dispatchers send the dispatch call out, they use the word unconscious, and there's 2 theories behind that. One is that it makes the emergency personnel respond more quickly because there's a chance they might be able to save that person. But there's also, he is a great guy. Thank you he was in my notifications, but I hadn't watched him, but thank you. But the other ones, yeah, they said a lot of stuff that's so different to other similar kinds of channels, and I was just like, I can't listen to any of them. Although that one that I sent you, she's been very spot on in a lot of things. She's worth listening to for sure. I can't remember his name. He's a former or current still investigator. Yeah, I was the same when I lived in halls of residence too, and that's the other thing, and share houses. But irrespective of that, people feel that there should have been all this screaming and carrying on. They don't understand. How graphic do I get? They were all asleep when he attacked them. And the first, it makes me feel sick talking about it, but I kind of want to do a live about it too. I'll have to summon up the courage because it is very graphic. He's got an incredibly sharp knife. They're asleep. If you cut their throat first, they're not going to be able to make any noises at all. Same as if you stab them in their jugular vein. The ones that had defence wounds, because that's being questioned as well, you would wake up when someone starts attacking you with a knife, and your natural instinct would be to grab the knife and try and pull it out of your throat. And you get cut in the process. So the people that are going, well, the police said they were all asleep when they were attacked. How can people have defence wounds? Well, again, it's logical. If you're asleep and there's a sharp metal object being stuck in your throat, your instinct is going to be to try and grab it and pull it out. And I don't understand why so many people are still asking these questions, because it's very, very easy to explain using logic. But the other thing with the unconscious report from the dispatcher, not only is it, I've heard twice now from emergency services people that that word does make emergency services rush more quickly. But the other one is that it's actually a coroner that needs to declare somebody deceased. My question is heels on the ground, prepared to testify under oath. They don't have the credentials. Interesting. Imagine that. No, they don't understand logic. And part of the problem is that I think a lot of creators would understand logic, but for some reason are not using it to provide an explanation to their subscribers who keep asking these questions over and over and over again. And it's difficult. It's awful. I mean, as much as it's a horrible thing to talk about, unfortunately, I have represented and also when I was a judge's associate, sat in a lot of murder trials, and there's a lot of stuff that is just kind of as revolting and graphic and gory as it might be, but it's just sort of known stuff and it's using logic. Johnny Law, that's it. I knew it was somebody Law, but I couldn't remember his first name. A lot of people say unconscious in my experience here because they haven't checked for a pulse, and 911 can't say anything but unconscious. Yeah, medical, exactly, Susie. Yep. And that to me was is the logical explanation of that, my understanding too. But there are some creators that have also thrown another one into the mix, which is, and they've spoken to emergency responders. I'm just going to chuck some foundation on and powder, and then I'll look into the chat again. Where was I? There's also, I've heard some creators saying that when they've spoken to emergency personnel, that the other theory that's been thrown around out there is that it also means that they will move more quickly because, their job is to save lives. And so the word unconscious used by a dispatcher makes them move more quickly. But for me, in my experience with a couple of friends of mine who are in emergency service roles, they treat every case like an emergency. I asked one of my friends yesterday who's an AMBO, and he said any dispatch calls they get, they consider them to be an emergency. So he didn't say that that's the reason why they would have used unconscious, because he said it doesn't matter what words are used. They get a call to go somewhere, it's an emergency. Lights are on, sirens are on, and away we go. I mean, if they get a dispatch call saying, an ambulance needs to attend, it's not an emergency, but this person might need to be transferred, and there's already, we've got triage ambulances here that get sent out to people and often can sort of solve the problem without people needing to be taken to hospital. But then when they're with that person, they might say, actually, we think you should be taken to hospital for observation for 24 hours or whatever. And so they're not really emergency call outs. So when ambulances get those ones, they don't put the lights and sirens on because another AMBO has already been triaging that patient and can say to them, no need to, fly down here. We're here with them. They're okay. They're comfortable. We just think they need to be taken to hospital for observation. But the other explanation about unconscious makes more sense to me is that members of the public, if you stumble across people, even if they do look well and truly dead, and you hear them on 911 calls saying, no, I know they're dead, but it's not terminology that they're not the official person that can state without a doubt that they're dead or declare them dead or deceased at X time, whatever it might be. And that was my understanding of it. But yeah, that's the other one that's going around is that thing about expediting calls. But I rang Tom yesterday because I was curious. And he was like, no, every call's an emergency. Unless, like I said, they get ones where it's triage ambulances saying it's not an emergency, but could you come hither, please? Hopefully that makes some sense. I know it will to you guys because you guys are smart. We need some of the not so smarts to cruise in here. So we can help them. I'll put my glasses on, see what you grievers are saying. Thanks for dropping Johnny's channel. He's really good. Like, it's worth watching the one about the floor plan. I mean, I ended up watching all the 3 that he's done on the Idaho 4. But the floor plan one's really good too because it sort of, I imagine he's quite frustrated too by all of the why didn't they wake up? There's plenty of reasons why. I mean, we've already talked about how so many of us, we sleep like logs, and nothing wakes us up. I've slept through fire alarms. I've had fireys in my bedroom lined up down the side of my bed doing the thumbs up to the camera while I'm laying there flat on my back in nothing but undies and no covers over me. Slept through the whole thing and the alarm went off in my room. Did not wake up. And I wasn't drunk. It was the middle of the day. I was just having a little siesta. I know here someone got told to try resuscitation on a body, got told they had to try, but no face left. Oh, no, it's awful. Hideous. I've heard, I used to listen to 911 calls a lot and then I stopped because they're just so heartbreaking. Yeah, the breakdown was really good. A retired police officer recommended Johnny T. Yeah, he's good. And that's the thing. We're always looking for these channels to promote for people. If you really are interested in crime, go to these channels that are using the information we've got at the moment and explaining and providing a bit more information to answer all of these questions. Like, that's where people need to be going. Don't go to some random unemployed person on YouTube who has an interest in crime putting their information and theories out there because they're not experts. Like, and not all of the expert channels are worth following either, by the way. Like, if you're watching a channel and the person that has the channel has a bit of experience in crime investigation, but they're sort of indicating a skewed view on, or they think it might be a particular outcome and it's still in that speculation phase, it's really not worth sticking around with them. They shouldn't be doing that. If they're experienced investigators, they know they've got to get all the pieces of the puzzle together first. So if they're kind of theorizing and going down a particular road and using, their own opinions, not relying on the information we've got. Like, if they're doing what so many of these YouTubers do and pushing a narrative like going down the foul play road with Kylie Rodney rather than waiting for all the facts to come together and all the science and the actual forensics and everything to come out, they're not worth following either. If they're veering astray and not relying on the facts alone, then yeah. And I've actually unsubscribed from a few channels that did that with Kylie Rodney. In fact, I had a subscriber point out to me how skewed a channel was, and I went back and watched it, and I was like, holy shit. Like, I watched a show that I hadn't seen. And I was like, you're part of the problem because you are an expert and you do have experience and you're also putting your own ideas into this into the mix and pushing a certain narrative, and there aren't the facts to support it. So, no, I came to you for expert information, and you're just as bad as the inexperienced true crimers that are doing that. So see ya. See you later. And I know they're not as exciting to watch, and it might all be a bit droll, but that's the reality of crime and cases. That's the more boring, or the more not necessarily boring. I think information's interesting, but you know what I mean? The less dramatic a channel that's just literally discussing things in a factual, sensible, logical way using the evidence that we have probably isn't titillating enough for people. I think people want all of the, you know, the creators losing their shit at someone in the chat, and they want all of that stuff as well. But the nerd in me, I just give me the facts, and then we'll see what happens. Yep, exactly. That's right, Ruth. And that's another thing too, because they do, not just with the poor kids in Idaho, but so many again, inverted commas, true crime channels discuss ad nauseum the date and time of death and make out that it's some sort of, you know, this doesn't match the facts and something's not right. It's often the date that someone's declared dead and the time, because they're now in the hands of like a coroner, a chief medical examiner, whoever's responsible where you live for signing off on the death certificates. But they make out that, you know, these YouTubers go, oh, there's something wrong because, you know, that this was stated as the date and time of death. And it's often, no, it was actually the date and time they were declared dead. They're two very different things. And we all know from investigations and the way they do autopsies and look at bodies and so on, they can often find a sort of time range when they believe where somebody died. You know, rigor mortis and the way blood into your body starts pooling in certain places, all of those sorts of things help them come up with a vague time frame of when someone might have died. But that can be very different to the date and time that they were officially declared dead. But there's heaps of YouTubers that have gone on forever about that. Oh, well, it doesn't match up with the story. I think if you're going to show an interest in any genre, in anything, you've got to research it and learn stuff as you go along. But there just seems to be a population now that don't seem to want to learn anything else. They've just decided that these are the steps that a case should go. Bang, 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 bang. And if it doesn't, then it's all, you know, a controversy and, oh, we better start theorizing and speculating. Like they're kind of missing basic information and understanding of how cases work, or they're just going off what they've seen on a TV show. The fireman did. I asked my friend the other day if she had a photo of it, and she doesn't. I think it's my friend Louise who's got the photo. I love that channel name, Johnny Law. My father, when I was younger, used to call police officers Johnny B. Law. It was a popular term when he was growing up. Well, you need to subscribe to Johnny Law and tell him that story because it's called classic. Rabbit trappers. Rabbit trappers. Chap 2 doors down is a first responder. Plus, and his and his comments on 999 or 111 stuff is strong. He hates callers being treated like idiots at times when they're not. Yeah, and the ones where they don't send someone out and the person ends up being killed, and the 911 calls I used to listen to, and there's a really bad Australian one. Like most of the time the Aussies were quite good, but there's a really bad one, and it bugged me for a long time. It was a really bad mental health story, and she they didn't send anyone out to help her, and she was murdered. It was horrible. Keyboard warriors want to be YouTube true crimers and not real life. No, they're not, but they think they are. And like I keep saying, if they're all such great investigators, how come the FBI hasn't snapped them up? Just going to put on my mascara. But I think a lot of them are also just lacking actual basic understanding of how things work, and they're not open to being educated on that. They think they're right because either they saw it on CSI or it was something that happened in the first case they ever looked at and they think that's the way it always works, or I don't know why. They just seem to be so, and I mean the whole thing with true crime is it attracts people that love researching and investigating and sleuthing and learning things. Like that genre attracts people that actually want to learn stuff. But there's all these people in the genre now that know better than everyone. They're the same as the ones that go, I wouldn't have let my daughter go to that party in the first place. And it's like, it wasn't your daughter. What you would or wouldn't do is completely irrelevant. This case is not about you. You know, they're the same ones. They've got this very narrow vision. They don't really crave any new information or, you know, learning or educating themselves about stuff. They don't wait for the facts to come out. They're trying to make sense of the information the public is given. And in no case is ever going to make sense based on the information the public's given, because it's not all of the evidence that they've got. The cops know shitloads more than we do and always will. But I'm also appalled at how much information does come out. Like, it's mind-boggling how much information can come out. The privacy laws in Australia are so tight and strict that, yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I mean, that's part of why Chris Watts was so fascinating to me, was the release of so much discovery, because stuff like that just doesn't happen here, ever. Getting secondhand knowledge that gets typed up wrong by a tired typist or rubbish media person, Chinese whispers, gets it so far from the truth. Exactly, and that's why these channels, I think we all know, we're all in the same camp, you know, pair it back to the facts. What are the facts? So any channel that starts putting in their own opinions and theories and they're avoiding or ignoring the facts, move on, unsubscribe, find another person. They're not worth following. Since the van people found Gabby's vehicle, a lot of them think they will and can solve a crime. Yeah, exactly. But they're not going to, sitting on their asses in their living rooms. Don't get me wrong, there probably will be someday some person who does spot something in a case that ends up leading to the arrest and charge, you know, of a perpetrator. In fact, there may already be some examples of that. In fact, there is. I keep trying to remember the case, but I won't do it at the moment. Well, Luca Magnotta was a bit of a, his undoing was a little bit social media based, but also because of social media, an innocent person ended their life because they were falsely accused of being the murderer. No, they don't name their sources. Oh no, those naughty firemen. I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that these days, would you? Yeah, the UK and Australia, the privacy laws are very strict, and that's one reason why creators who constantly say, well, you're not even from America, so why are you commenting on an American case? Well, it's because we find out a lot more about your cases than our own. And I don't mind going live. Like, I want to do this one with Toy Accordingly, because I don't mind talking about cases where people get arrested and so on that happen in Australia. I'm all for that. In fact, they're the ones I'd rather report on because it's purely factual. And we want perpetrators to be caught, charged, arrested, charged, convicted. Like, we want that. That's the outcome we want. So I don't mind chatting about those cases because to me that's true crime discussions. But the reality is, in Australia and in the UK, a lot of information isn't put out there. So we don't have a lot to talk about. And we don't have lunatics going to people's homes and standing at the front with bullhorns and making people's lives hell either. Like, you guys are providing us with never-ending material and things to discuss. But also, there's no property in crime. Like, if you're interested in true crime, you're interested in true crime and crimes that occur all over the world. and throughout history. I mean, the amount of people talking about the similarities between Ted Bundy and what happened in Idaho, half of the people that are talking about Ted Bundy probably weren't even alive when he was on his reign of terror, you know? We talk about old cases. People still talk to this very day about Jack the Ripper. None of us were alive when that was happening. But that's the nature of true crime. Charles Manson, like, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. In fact, I was listening to a case this morning while I was getting ready of two little girls in Adelaide who went missing from Adelaide Oval in 1973. And, you know, and then there's obviously the Beaumont children. There's all these unsolved cases. And I wasn't living in Adelaide at the time, but I'm fascinated in their stories. It's just very strange that there's this sense of propriety that we own this because it happened in our country. Well, that's not true crime either. That's another thing. All these people that are sort of imposing rules on who should follow what and talk about what and when. That's not how it works. If you're interested in flowers, some people might be limited to only being interested in flowers that grow in their own garden, but a shitload of people are interested in flowers all over the world. Or animals. I mean, I've got friends that live in landlocked states in America who think dolphins are the best thing out, and the only thing they've ever experienced of a dolphin is probably at SeaWorld. But they love them, even though they're not living by the beach and see them every day. It just, just sort of say that you can only discuss cases, or if you discuss a case that happened in another country, that you're not, your voice isn't as important because you're not from that country. That's bullshit. Yeah, it's a really sad one, isn't it? Is it Joanne Radcliffe and, oh shit, no, I've forgotten her surname, Kirsty Morgan, I think? Oh, I feel bad if I got her name wrong. The little one. And so horrible too, because it involved, I mean, these two girls were clearly abducted and murdered, but that horrible sort of pedophile scene, and one of the suspects was Stanley Arthur, and then another one was Arthur Stanley. Like, there's all these really weird, they were their first middle names, they had different surnames, but just all these, and they looked alike, like just really weird things. That was horrible. And that little girl, he picked up Kirsty and was walking really quickly, and Joanne Radcliffe was running after him and slapping him on the back and telling him to put her down, and nobody intervened like you would these days. I'd rather intervene to find out that it's just a dad and his two daughters and one of them's having a tantrum than watch them go by and not do or say anything. Gordon, thank you. Oh, I knew Morgan Gordon. My brain has slightly gone into work mode. Thank you so much, Miss Kay. But yeah, that story's a shocker. The worst thing to me in that story, I mean, well, there's a lot of worse things, but the fact that the mum went straight to the administrative office and asked them to put something out over the PA about the girls missing, and they didn't do it till the end of the game, and by then more than an hour had gone by, and he would have had plenty of time to have left the stadium with the girls by then. But if they'd put that announcement out straight away, he would have still been on the ground and with the girls, and he wouldn't have got away with it, as far as I'm concerned. That was a massive fuck up. But, you know, the 70s was such a different time, like kids being abducted from games. I mean, these little girls went off to the loo together because Joanne was really responsible, and nobody thought that their children were going to get abducted just going to the toilet during a football match, you know. And there'd already been once and they'd come back. So the next time the little one needed to go to the toilet again, they were like, yeah, no worries, Joanne, you take her again, that's fine. But if that PA message had been put out straight away, there's a very good chance someone would have seen this guy and stopped him. But even after he left the Oval and he had the girls, Joanne's running after him and yelling at him to put Kirsty down, and people witnessed that. But again, it was a different time. Like, you didn't spend your life every day thinking, being on high alert, that there are people abducting children right under your nose, you know? Like, it was just one of those, a bit like Chris Dawson. He was a much-loved Australian NFL player and popular school teacher, and people just didn't think that he could possibly have murdered his wife. Different time. And people just admiring him for being an athlete and not being able to see past that. I mean, there's still people that think O.J. Simpson's innocent, you know? Like, and that's in recent times, and he even got convicted, you know, of not the murder charges, but that civil trial. Those charges are interesting, like that, when you can go down the civil road, and they're based on logic. You know, what's the logical explanation? Well, the illogical explanation was he did it, so off you go, OJ, enjoy your time in prison. When I was a kid, people were much more worried about little boys being accompanied. Lots taken in the girls' loos. It was his glove. That was a horrible, vicious murder. Murders, they were horrible. You talk about murders being personal, that one is the epitome of that. Yeah, I think the PA was a major flaw. It could have been such a different outcome. But again, you know, even if the PA had happened, how many people would be like all on high alert, automatically thinking the worst and stopping this guy, you know, like, but I still think it could have made a massive difference. Why do I end up with a good little audience when I'm about to say goodbye? So if anyone wants a press pass, let me know. My Photoshop skills are really bad, but I can definitely doctor you up some little press pass. But I think it's a sad sign of the times for the community who think they're true crime, but we're going to call them the gore crows, the tragedy pimps, the bandwagoners, the sensationalists, because I really think that this is going to potentially make what they're already doing to cases, which is very damaging, even worse. Because if she's flashing that badge at members of the public and they think they're speaking to the media, and she's got Olivia there doing all the filming and they think they're going to be on some TV show, yeah, it's not good news. Press pass for Ruth. Everyone gets a press pass. I'll put typos and make it all a bit crooked and use a completely different photo for you, you know, like make it look as legit as I can. Oh, dear. I better go to work, Grievers. I hope I have a good day too. I've got a busy day, I know that much, because I worked on Friday. I know it's in my calendar. It's not a walk in the park, but this job isn't. It never is. But what I do when I do my job is I look at the facts and the evidence and I advise my clients. It's a very straightforward process. And if we need more evidence, we look for it. And if we don't find it, it's not relevant. And if we do find it, you beauty. A members perk, everyone gets a press pass. Yeah, I don't have members on this channel though. This channel's tiny. This channel baby. Thanks, gorgeous Scout. Thanks for all hanging out. I probably will do a live. If it's not tonight, it will definitely be tomorrow night with Toya Cordingley on this case. Sorry, on this channel. We'll chat about her story and hopefully justice for Toya is not too far away. It was just a really horrible story. But the alleged perpetrator is on his way back to Australia to face our courts. So that's really good news. I also want to do a live looking at some of the channels that we like to react to that are just irresponsible. And I also, and I want to talk about Idaho 4 because I am following it, but I also want us to have a discussion about how so many people in these channels, in these chats, keep asking questions and the creators aren't actually answering them. But also why, even if they are given that information, why they're not accepting it and just moving on to the next topic. Like, why do people get hung up on something even when you have 50,000 people giving them the information they're seeking and they still refuse to budge? What's that all about? You have a good day too, Miss Kay. I hope everyone has a good day. Good night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend if you're in a place where you've still got a bit of a weekend. If it's Monday morning where you have a ripper week. And until next time, don't get struck by a smooth criminal. Diddle-ling ding, diddling ding, diddling ding, ding. That's my new outro. I hope you liked it. Bye, everyone.